Maybe. Ah, I got them all there. Okay. All right. What does that mean then, if we have them all? What kind of a study is it? Come on. Continuous. Takes a great deal of effort. Great deal of effort. All right. Continuity, right? Continuous. Endurance. Order, right? And that will be necessary if you want to go through an investigation to bring out the truth of what you're studying. This is solid geometry. Doesn't it look like it?
Solid.
No way, does it? You see, it's analogical. He's taking each one of these analogically. Now, there is a place in the Republic, and I want to telegraph it ahead. All right? Later in the dialogue in Book 8, Book 9, and a section of 10, he talks about these figures that we were talking about before, which is the just man and the unjust man, and the kinds of lives they lead. And he talks about them in terms of plane figures. And then he talks about them, right, when you begin to study them and see those figures, those people in depth, solid geometry. When you see those people in depth and can pursue them and to see the effect that justice and injustice has on the soul, he said that's when you begin to study them in depth, these plane figures. And they're in motion. How they are functioning. Pardon me? No, not yet. Right? So now, I can get these sections for you so that therefore this language of solid geometry really applies to people's particular characters as they're proceeding through this dialogue and how they're compared and studied. So, enough of that. This is called solid geometry. No, we have another one yet. Now look here. What we need to study now is the movements. It's the movements of real speed and real slowness. In what? This, would you agree, you're going to have to decipher because it doesn't make any sense. And that's why you know you're right on and you're understanding. You always preserve what you don't understand in Plato, you hang on to it, and you wait for it to be clarified by the dialogue itself. So what we have to look for now is what he means by true number, and see if there's any description of any kind of speed or slowness attached to true number, and how he uses the term true number, don't we? But that's not enough. Remember what we did before? We talked about plane figures as characters. Now look what he's saying. In this study of movements, you must see it not only in true numbers, but in all true figures, both in relation to one another and as vehicles of the things they carry and contain. Now, when we get into these arts, especially in the dialectic, he breaks it up into sections. The sections are interspersed with sections from the allegory of the cave. Through this entire thing, when he gets into the dialectic, he's going to go back into the allegory of the cave, especially the part dealing with the upper world, which is seldom dealt with. But that's the heart of the study, not the allegory of the cave part, the allegory of the upper world. This is where all of these things are going to be discussed. That's what he does. But let's just stay with the language at this point. Right? And he says, you know what? It is absurd to think that I'm dealing with the sky and the heavens. Notice what he's doing. Because our goal, he says, we must find not the truth of things by looking upward in the heavens. We must find the truth with regard to equals, doubles, or any other ratio. You see, he's moved from numbers to ratios now. numbers to ratios. Why does he deal with numbers and ratios? Because when you're studying ratios and you're lining them up with precision, that's the foundation for analogy, meaningful analogies. All right. He says, you know what? This study of astronomy, he said, you know what it is? We must reach a certain level. And the level we have to reach is the level of problems. As in the study of geometry. So whatever we were doing in geometry, that's the way you're going to do it when you're studying astronomy. Therefore, you have to know what's going on in geometry, have to grasp that because you're going to do something very slow. Hey, the same way you're going to carry it on now in this curious thing called astronomy. That's only if we have one goal in mind. And that goal we have in mind is, that's only if we are to convert to right use the natural indwelling intelligence in the soul of man. That's what it's for. That whole purpose is to do that. Awaken the intelligence in the soul of man, turn it around, so therefore you can contemplate pure essence. That's where it's going. That's his goal. That's called astronomy. Does it look like astronomy? Wow. Now, if astronomy is following the model of geometry, do you have an idea what harmony may follow?
Oh, yeah.
This method corresponds to that of astronomy. And he says what you have to do is ascend to generalized problems. What kinds of problems? Again, which numbers are concordant and which are not? Back with what? Numbers, ratios, plane figures. We're in no way talking about anything that looks like harmony, are we? This is harmony. Now, he has a special use of the word concordant. If you had a TLG, access to TLG, of Plato's index, you could look that word up in the Greek, and you could find every place it uses, and you'll see why he uses it. Because he's taking it metaphorically. He says this study has only one goal. Only one goal. It's useful for the investigation of the beautiful and the good. No longer the idea of the good, but the ultimate. Now, beauty, in relationship to the good, this beauty, the most brilliant light of being, is obviously the most beautiful thing that anyone can possibly imagine because it violates all restrictions. It's a total experience of pure beauty. It is said to stand in this relationship. The ultimate is the good. The vestibule around the good is pure beauty, radiant, shining, blissful. That's called being. Idea of the good. Because if you behold it, that's what you'll encounter. Therefore, this is useful for the investigation of the beautiful and the good. That's what its purpose. That's its purpose. Now, none of these arts should be studied for any other purpose but one. And once that purpose is achieved, he drops it from consideration. And he doesn't pursue it any further. He said these arts and studies goes just far enough, right? Goes just far enough to bring out their community and kinship with one another, and to infer their affinities. In this talk, are you beginning to see the kinship between them?